Mike,
4 minutes.
This is going to be a very open-ended question. Let me get my near seers on here.
All right.
Oh, there we go. It's not blurred anymore. Okay. All within about a week, about a week's time, maybe 2 weeks' time, we hear Tesla will start shipping its affordable all-electric Model 3. GM had already started shipping the Chevy Bolt all-electric just not too long ago, a few months ago, a year ago. Volvo plans to make only all-electric and or hybrid vehicles by 2019. They're phasing out everything else. France has announced just this week it plans to end the sale of gas or diesel cars by 2040. And on top of that, we already know that Norway and the Netherlands plan to move to all-electric vehicles by 2025. Germany and India have proposed similar measures with a target of 2030. All this activity going on all-electric vehicles and what countries themselves want to do in terms of all-electric vehicles. When you hear all that, what comes to mind? What do you think when you hear about all that?
Well, the first thing I think is that list of countries are mostly European. India's in there too. I mean, I can't help but take it in a political bent because that's just where my mind has been lately, like many of us. There's definitely a divergence between an American viewpoint on transportation and industry and what carbon contributes to climate and whether that matters or not versus the rest of the world. We saw it with Trump walking away from the Paris Accord. So I think what you're seeing is these nations saying, well, listen, it's similar to the argument we always talk about with reducing carbon. Well, it's just good to reduce waste, period. I mean, whether or not it really affects climate change or not is kind of besides the point. These automobiles that they are being developed are going to be more efficient. They're going to use less resources. Electric vehicles don't use zero resources. They use resources.
You got to make the batteries. You got to mine the equipment.
I mean, there's resources that are invested, but from what we know and what we understand, those resources are maybe not as damaging to the planet as maybe some fossil fuels. We don't know. Again, I mean, a lot of this depends.
This will be interesting how this pans out.
A lot of this depends on how you feel about climate change and whether the carbon footprint really matters or not. I mean, I look at it and I say, well, I assumed by this time that there was going to be more of an electric vehicle footprint in America than there was. And then we were moving in that direction when gas prices were very high. Because it always comes down to the consumer.
Right.
The American consumer is probably the strongest force in the world, really, right now in terms of driving products and services and things. So the American consumer, when gas here in California, I just filled up yesterday, was $2.59 a gallon. I'm sure it's cheaper in a lot of other parts of the country. I mean, when gas is at that rate, people want trucks. They want F-150s. I mean,
it's interesting you mentioned that because when I was kind of researching this, I didn't realize, because I hadn't looked at it before, Europe has had electric vehicles for a long.
But their gas prices are also ridiculous.
Exactly, I mean, exactly. So they had a driver for that, right? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, electric, and so they've
petrol, I should say,
or petrol, yes, or diesel.
Diesel too.
So all of the major European automakers have electric vehicles. Some of them multiple. I mean, I think Renault has got 3 or 4 different electric vehicles. Fiat's got them. BMW, Volkswagen. All of those guys have had electric vehicles out and being sold, and we're only kind of just, well, I mean, we had the Chevy Volt briefly, and you do have the Nissan Leaf here in the United States, and
you have Prius. I mean,
the Prius,
you have plenty of hybrid.
Prius
vehicles.
is hybrid.
It's hybrid.
I'm thinking
pure electric.
Pure electric, but you're right. I mean, it does come down. It does come down to gas prices, but I picked up on the first thing on that too, is that the Europeans seem to be much further ahead and definitely more interested in this type of thing
look at public transit
than we do.
Look at public transit in Europe versus public transit in the United States. I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, public transit, bus lines and things in the United States, they're here, people use them, but people love their cars.
Yeah.
In Europe, I think there's much less of this idea that you've got to have a car, 2 cars, 3 cars.
Right.
You have you and your spouse and your 2 kids, and you have 4 cars in the family.
Right.
It's like, come on. I mean, but there's a lot of families like that, and I mean, America's a driving country. So I think you're going to see, if I can predict, I think you're going to see a continued divergence of this. I think you're going to see as the decades roll on, unless things change, I think things can always change politically or economically or whatever. I think you're going to continue to see a divergence where there's going to be much more of these solutions in Europe and much fewer here.
Well,
in America.
I think it's also interesting that they're talking about the G19 when it comes to environmental the environmental issues.
Yeah, the G19 plus one. You've heard that term. I mean, you know, I mean, in the Paris Accords, it's the United States and a couple other smaller countries that are not in it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a statement. It's a political statement.
And we could probably discuss this forever, but is that going to be a positive or negative for us? I think only time is going to tell. I think it's going to be a negative, but who knows? There's
plenty of people that say it's a positive. There's plenty of people that say, no, we've got to drill, we've got to get back to doing coal. I mean, we've got to have these jobs, and we've got to export energy because that's the way we can have good jobs in America. There's strong arguments to be made for that, at least in the short term. I don't know long term.
Right.
In the short term, though, there's strong arguments to be made that actually does help the American economy. Who knows? We're going to find out.